Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha, you're watching Perspective. In a transformative step to bolster India's research and innovation ecosystem, the Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has approved the Research, Development and Innovation, the RDI scheme, with a corpus of 1 lakh crore rupees. Now, this scheme aims to provide long-term financing or refinancing with long tenors at low or nil interest rates to spur private sector investment in research, development and innovation. Some of the key objectives of this scheme include encouraging the private sector to scale up research, development and innovation in sunrise domains and in other sectors relevant for economic security, strategic purpose and self-reliance. Financing transformative projects at higher levels of technology readiness levels, supporting acquisition of technologies which are critical or of high strategic importance, and facilitating setting up of a deep tech fund of funds. So on the show today, we're going to talk about the funding mechanism of the RDI scheme, how it addresses the critical need of the private sector for a long-term affordable financing, fostering self-reliance and global competitiveness. So to discuss these aspects and more, I'm pleased to welcome two distinguished guests on the program. Let me begin by introducing Padma Bhushan Dr. Ajai Chowdhry, co-founder HCL. He is the chairman of the Mission Governing Board of the National Quantum Mission of India and currently a distinguished fellow at the Niti Aayog. Dr. Chowdhry, absolute pleasure to welcome you on the program on Sansad TV. Thank you very much for your time. We are also pleased to welcome Professor Ashutosh Sharma, former Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Professor Sharma, it's been a long time, but so glad you could spare some time to join us on the program. Welcome to Sansad TV. Let me in fact begin with your thoughts on this landmark initiative, the scheme that's been approved by the Union Cabinet. Do you believe it's a game-changing move that could spur a lot of growth and development in India's innovation ecosystem?
Oh, absolutely. There is zero doubt about it. The need for such an instrument was felt for a long time. The Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Science and Technology has been supporting a lot of R&D in the country. But basically, it was driven by the invention and discovery ecosystem, which basically means R&D labs, it means academic institutes and so on. So even when we had industry, they were like partners. It was not led by industry. Now, the difference in this fund is that for the first time, this is very historical. This is so historical. I can tell you that this would be really a new beginning for both our knowledge creation, our knowledge consumption, and for our economic impact of R&D. So what is it? So basically now, for the first time, that R&D and innovation would be driven from the industry end. So industry could have academia as partner, right? Instead of academia having industry as partner. So the difference basically is that there is the seeding and scale up of R&D and innovation led by industry in strategic and sunrise sectors, deep techs, the kind of technology that we need for India. And nobody else is going to develop it for us. Nobody else is going to give it to us. So this is what we need to do in critical sectors for critical technologies, develop it through industry based on the knowledge which is already there in our ecosystem. So you see, our weakness has never been in terms of knowledge. It has never been in terms of Saraswati. It has been in terms of converting Saraswati into Lakshmi. So the interface between knowledge and market has been rather weak. It has been rather poor. And so this is the instrument which was actually going to handle all of this. And it is going to do that by providing a long-term, affordable, and risk financing. So it is clear that if you are looking at something new, there's going to be risk. And industry is looking at short-term perspective. Of course, they have to. So point is, we need certain technology. We need to be Atmanirbhar, and to be able to do that, some of the risk has to be taken over by the government. And so this particular fund is just going to do that. So as you develop technology more and more, risk becomes less and less. And at that point, industry can actually totally pick it up. And that's what happens in all the developed countries. So I'm so glad that this is happening now. Cabinet, the decision under Honorable Prime Minister, long overdue, in fact. So this is a new chapter. a new
Certainly.
chapter
So
in R&D of
we'll
the country.
discuss the funding mechanisms in greater detail in due course of the program. But Dr. Chowdhry, coming in for your perspective on the RDI scheme, which was long awaited. You've seen the Indian tech landscape evolve over decades. So from an industry perspective, how significant do you think this move is in giving the private sector the push that it needed all this while to lead in high-end innovation and particularly strategic research?
Well, actually, the challenge in the country till now is that we spend very little on R&D. And especially, we spend hardly anything in the private sector. The majority of R&D is done in the government sector, the science and research institutions, the education institutions. So this is not good enough. Today, as per GDP, we are 0.64% of GDP is what we spend on R&D. Major countries spend anywhere between 2 to 5%. Now, unless we start to think more about R&D, we are not going to succeed because the world has changed. The world has become unipolar. Everyone is on their own. And as Professor Sharma said, nobody will give us the technology. Everybody will preserve their technology. Right. And lots of sanctions are coming back. So, for example, the US has sanctions, Europe has sanctions, China has sanctions. And if these sanctions keep coming, then we need to be totally self-sufficient. We have to now move from Atmanirbharta to technology sovereignty. That is the essential part. And we need to own technologies which are required for the next 15 years for India's growth and for us to get to a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
So do you believe, sir, that it bridges the gap? In a lot of ways, this was long overdue. But now that this has come through with a corpus of 1 lakh crore rupees, it will finally bridge that gap that was required between ambition and access to capital. Will it, in more ways than one, ignite that innovative passion that we've been speaking about for years, but perhaps this could be the push?
You see, I do not believe that the corporate sector is short of money. It's the aspiration. The aspiration to spend on R&D, wait a while, get returns is not being there. And that is really why everybody, as Professor Sharma said, सब लोग आज की बात सोचते हैं. Nobody is thinking, what should we do for tomorrow? If we look at today's requirement, yes, the board will say, don't spend money on R&D, go and get more profits. But that's not the way for a Viksit Bharat to succeed. We now need to make sure that the private sector definitely spends money on R&D. And this will be a huge nudge from the government to tell the private sector, go ahead, we are willing to share the risk with you. It's not that only you have to do the risk, we are going to share the risk. Now, this is a breakthrough strategy by the government. And I think pretty much if a corporate wants to spend 10 crores, 5 crores the government will give. Now, that reduces the risk by 50%. Right. Similarly, for startups, if they are going to put 5 crores, the government will pay 70%. So, this is the kind of nudge that the government is doing now, which was essential. In a manner, we are telling the private sector, wake up. We now need to get better at doing R&D. We need to create technology in India. We need to have IP created in India for tomorrow and today. We cannot be continue to dependent on others. Aap dekh lijiye what's happened in China recently. Look at yesterday's news. They are making sure that the Chinese all go back and they don't stay in Apple factories. Number one. Number two, what's happened to the critical minerals issue? Every automobile company in India is today short of magnets. The third thing is that they've stopped export of fertilizers. Now, these are all things that they're going to constantly do to us, to trouble us. So it's better that we start to create our own. And therefore, this fund will enable us to start thinking that, okay, we have no choice but to do it. And I think this big nudge that the government is giving is one of the best things that the government could have done. And I think Honorable Prime Minister has to be really, really congratulated for this. So because of this phenomenal decision to actually push R&D into private sector.
Absolutely. I think it's important that at a time when the world is volatile and countries are becoming more and more protective about their technologies, as both of you rightly suggested, it's important for India to become self-reliant in critical areas, and therefore there are various aspects in this scheme. There are various funding mechanisms that we will talk about now in greater detail. Professor Sharma, an important aspect of this scheme is to offer long-term, low or zero interest loans to the private sector. Now, how will this unlock innovation, particularly in sunrise sectors you mentioned, but like deep tech, AI, semiconductors, clean energy? So how is it going to unlock the potential? If you could explain that for us and our viewers.
In fact, what Ajay ji said is so relevant, and I will also say a little bit more about how this is going to unlock our potential. You see, one of the aspects of industry-led R&D is that it gives relevance and direction, an early direction which academia by itself lacks. So while academia is more into creating knowledge, it's not always creating knowledge which would be utilized or which would have direction and relevance. So industry-led R&D would bring that direction and relevance. And even more important, let me point out that in India, in order to invest more in R&D, you need more number of scientists who are engaged in R&D. Now in India, there are 250 researchers per million people. In US, it is 4,200 scientists per million. In any of the so-called developed countries, it is 4,000 to 5,000 scientists per million of population. So you see, it is not, if I want to put in more R&D money with relevance and direction, I also need to have more number of scientists who are engaged in R&D. Now, these new scientists will not only come from public sector, they not only come from the government. So now this is going to create actually a pool of scientists in R&D in private sector. And that is so vital, that is so critical, because we don't have enough people in order to be able to do Atmanirbhar R&D in India in all the critical sectors. So a very big impact of this scheme, this instrument, is going to be create a new pool of scientists who are working in industrial R&D, which means they understand actually the market realities, they understand what is actually needed and how you're going to get there. So you cannot now wake up and say, look, I want a new technology overnight, which would be globally competitive. This would be totally unrealistic. So therefore, since industry alone cannot do it, because they would be focused on year profit, and their shareholders and everything else. So it is only fair that government actually gives the initial push. It provides the risk capital, so that, as was pointed out by Ajay ji, that industry actually would get into it. Actually, there are two ways that government can sweeten the deal in developing technology. One of them is risk capital, which is long term, which is basically mitigates the risk, and it looks at the critical technologies which are needed for India. And what does that mean? It means there is also a market for them. So whenever a government is the first buyer of critical technologies, of sunrise sectors, all our needs, deep technology, that government actually support developing such technologies, and they're also the buyers. So basically, in place of depending on imports. Depending on imports. By the way, for example, 80% of biomedical devices are imported even today. So it's not because we lack knowledge. In fact, I know so many researchers in the country who can overnight make these devices. Point is that somebody has to take them to market. So it basically means that this R&D has to be driven by industry. And so I think it's fairly clear that this is a game changer, as you pointed out, that this is indeed would be transformational. Beyond our imagination. I can guarantee you that I have had long experience with this, and that we have always been thinking about something like this.
Absolutely. Let's hope this scheme does things differently and the outcome is different this time. But Dr. Chowdhry, taking on from the initial point that Professor Sharma made about not just the capital, but also the scientific leadership that we will require. So can we say that in a way, RDI scheme has laid the financial groundwork, but we will now need a plan to mobilize human capital, both domestically and globally? And if yes, what kind of a plan will be required in the times to come to perhaps complement this financial groundwork that's been laid by RDI?
You see, he's made a brilliant point about people. And the people are, the researchers are the ones that will make this happen. Now, private sector has not invested in hiring these researchers till now because they just didn't want to take a risk. They want to go and get a product from China, put a logo on it and sell it by tomorrow and make 5 and 10%. That's not where this country should be. This country deserves much better. We have the best skills in the world in terms of technology and knowledge. And the number of STEM people that come out of this country are phenomenal. So all we need to do is take those people and convert them to be better scientists and engineers so that we can genuinely go forward. Now, look at the whole situation today. How did America happen? America happened because organizations like DARPA, they gave challenges to private sector and startups and said, go make these products. If you make these products and we accept them, we'll give you loads of business to be successful. Now, the point that Professor Sharma made was absolutely right. The government business has to go to these people if they do this product. That's the challenge we need to give to the private sector. And then they will respond. See, today they think if I make the product, who will buy? But if the government says, okay, you go and make these 20 products, and I will buy these 20 products in large numbers, then the job gets done. It's a virtuous cycle. That's how America got created. Now, what did we do during COVID period? We actually took a decision to buy local vaccine. The company produced that vaccine and government accumulated the whole orders of all the states, gave it to this company, and that company became successful. And we also created a local product. Right. And I do believe that local product was better than the global product. Of course, WHO played its own games in not allowing it. That's a different issue.
That's a different
But the point that we have to be clearly about is that the HR part, the people part, we can handle another way. Today, if government needs to get diaspora to come back, America is today throwing out all its researchers. Trump has taken this decision to cut all research money. Those people are available. Now, they are not going to be able to be easily absorbed within government because government has a different salary structure. Right. But moment you create this model, which this scheme will provide, then in this model, all these people can come back to India and work together with us. So we are not going to no longer start from scratch. We will start, if it's a 0 to 10 situation, we'll start at 50. So that is the benefit that we will have of getting those people back. And they will come at private sector salaries. So they will not have this issue, why should I go back to India and lose my whole compensation that I get in America? So all these issues will get sorted out. And one of the models that the government has thought through, and I remember in some of the discussions that we had with DST, they were talking about a very interesting concept, which Professor Sharma does know, is that they talked about a focused research organization model. Now, this focused research organization, he referred to it, is a concept where industry and research organization come together for a specific technology. And the funding is provided to them as a FRO. And this FRO, when it gets this technology, has the capability to pay whatever salary is required to make this happen. Right. And therefore, they can hire from abroad, they can hire from within India, and they can do what they like. So, so this is opening a completely new way of creating technology. And as I keep saying to everybody, the big techs come to India, they sell all their products to us Indians, but we don't sell anything to anybody else. Why is that? So that's another issue. Google come to India, they sell a whole bunch to us. We are happy buying from them. Look at Microsoft. All our email system in the government runs on all global products. Why? Does China do that? China doesn't allow a single global company to operate in that country. This is the opportunity. India's opportunity is its size. The size of its business available here from the government, it's its strength. So if this funding goes to private sector and startups and goes to focused research organizations, they will also have the benefit of getting government money and government business. That will become a virtuous cycle, and nobody will then say, why should I invest on that?
Certainly, and that's a valid point because innovation doesn't emerge just from the capital alone. There are various factors which will drive it through to achieve the desired results. What is the kind of larger vision that may be required in the times to come? That is something that I'll ask you, Professor Sharma, in the next round. But for now, there's a point that Dr. Chowdhry made about the private sector not wanting to take risks. Can we say that there is a mechanism now under RDI scheme which supports risky but breakthrough innovations which we require and which can help India become a global innovation hub, something that all this while we've been wanting to become, but there are factors which have restrained us. So maybe this is just the beginning and there could be multiple such schemes, multiple such initiatives which could help us realize that vision?
Oh, absolutely. And one word answer to all your questions is absolutely. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And so are there multiple models? In fact, such a model was seeded as a kind of pilot. In fact, one of the missions, technology missions called Quantum Technologies, it is being headed by Dr. Ajai Chowdhry.
Yes.
And before that, in DST, we had seeded in certain technology missions which had this DNA. What do I mean by that? It basically means that you see there's a mission in AI and cyber physical systems worth 4,000 crores. Now this quantum mission, which is also a very huge mission. What we want in these missions, that they are arm's length from the government. Second aspect is they have the freedom and flexibility to be able to work both with the government institutions and industry as equal partners. And at the same time, they can indeed, they have a Section 8 company, for example, which is a not-for-profit company. So they are bound not by the rules of the government, but they are bound by the rules of a company. So in other words, you can actually invite people from abroad and you can pay the fair market rates to people who are competent. So all of that actually, those missions have been very successful because they integrate all the way from basic R&D to startups to market to industry partnership and the flexibility that is required. So I have no doubt that the future of all these technology missions basically is A, integration, B, end-to-end value chain, which basically means going all the way from basic R&D to market. And in between, you have players like industry, you have startups, you have government policies. Don't forget, all of these things happen. And in fact, Ajay ji referred to it. He said, look, it's not because we don't have science, but because we may not have the right policies and structure and processes for it. I'll give you a very quick example. In fact, he had referred to some company. By the way, all the maps that we have been using until few years ago or even today, they are not made in, they are not monetized by an Indian company. Right. So without taking the name, the maps that I use, which are used for service, which is used for infrastructure, which is used for now, Swamitwa scheme of Honorable Prime Minister, all of this was not possible, not because we didn't have the science, it's not because we didn't have the drones and LiDAR, but because we had a policy, 100-year-old policy from the time of British, which said that nobody can do surveying and mapping without very tedious approvals from the government, which government itself takes 8 months. Okay, something like Survey of India themselves, they will take 8 months to get approval to do survey, right? So it didn't make any sense. By the way, that policy was changed under the very
but Professor,
guidance.
now we are on a vision 2047. That's our goal. We want to perhaps undo the wrongs that have been done, and there is a framework that we've set for ourselves. But as someone who's headed such an important ministry, the question here is beyond funding. In your experience, what is the immediate or what are the priority areas for us to become a global innovation hub in strategic technologies?
I understood. It's not only about funding. Funding is necessary but not sufficient. So what is it that we need in terms of sufficiency for our science to work?
Yes.
The question you're asking is what makes science and technology work or not? Right? So no matter how much money you would throw in there, it would not bring fruit unless you have ease of doing business, you have flexibility, you have freedom, you have integration of all stakeholders of science and technology working together, and you have the rules, regulations, and policy. So in fact, we need to deregulate, we need to liberalize. And wherever government is a first buyer, let me introduce a very revolutionary concept here in one sentence. When government is the buyer, they should not look at L1 for a company, they should look for L1 for the nation. Okay, so as soon as you
Perfect.
put in the concept of L1,
Beautiful
the
concept.
lowest cost for the nation, it would become clear that you have to buy, you have to develop and buy indigenous products.
Right.
Okay, how many jobs you are going to create here? How much of that money circulates here as opposed to what is going out? And this is very clearly pointed out by Ajay ji. I had in fact introduced this concept. I will always be a champion of this concept. I don't know if it's going to take 10 years for this to come into being. But then, it is clear that when government is buying taxpayers' money is being used, then it is a benefit to taxpayer, which is what counts. It is not benefit to some third country, which counts, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
L1 is a wrong concept, okay? And so I think that all of this stuff needs to be done. And finally, let me just say, what we need is a cultural and behavioral transformation. Okay, in the absence of which no amount of scientists or the money is going to work. In fact, I gave 1 full hour lecture on what makes science and technology work, and cultural and behavioral aspect. The confidence that we have in ourselves as a nation, in our scientists and our science, is what is going to do it.
I think
Okay,
that's the
nothing
most important part in any kind of transformation
leadership,
that
not
we are visualizing
followers.
today.
Right.
But what an interesting conversation this is turning out to be. I wish time allowed us to keep continuing. But Dr. Chowdhry, I'll have to wind up the program with one last comment from you. Respond to Professor Sharma, and at the same time, how do you see us, or what do you think should be a vision that we must adopt right now to perhaps connect the three things that there is no dearth of in India? Ambition, talent, infrastructure is something that we are coping up with, but we need a solid vision, perhaps, which can connect the three in order to have the desired outcome about which we are talking about today and which will lead us to our Vision 2047.
So fundamentally, what I feel is that we should identify 12 or 14 areas within the RDI scheme. And these 12 and 14 areas are what we believe the technologies we must own. And we must spend time next 5 to 10 years to really do end-to-end everything in that technology and create companies in India, which will be top 5 in the world 10 to 15 years from now. And every product that we create, every technology we create should have at least a $200 to $300 billion market globally. Otherwise, there's no sense in creating products. We must convert our country from being a services-led country to a product-led country. Too many years we have spent doing services. You look at what is happening to IT services today. They're all facing headwinds due to AI and automation.
Yes.
We now need to change our thinking. We need to make products. So the good news is that the new missions of the government are totally product-oriented. For example, in Quantum Mission, we have exact description of what products the scientists must make in the next 7 to 10 years. If you look at this scheme, RDI scheme, the thought is beautiful. ANRF will do TRL1 to TRL4. This fund will take it from TRL5 to TRL9 and do total translation research. And where we don't have technology, we should go and buy it because RDI provides for it. For example, there are so many countries that are graying. Look at Korea, look at Taiwan, look at Japan. All those countries are graying. A lot of their technology companies don't have successors. We can go and buy those companies. So we know we need to think big. We have to say, okay, we will have a Qualcomm from India in next 10 years. We will have a AT&T from India in 5 years. This is the kind of thinking we have to have.
Absolutely.
We keep thinking too small. We need to think big. And all it needs is aspiration. And I've always maintained that A is greater than R. Aspiration is greater than resources. If you have the aspiration, resources happen. And the country is now being provided all the resources by the government. And the good news is, ease of doing R&D has also been done recently as a major strategy from DST, which was totally led by DST, approved by the government. So when I was doing my mission in quantum, people are saying, I take too long to buy buy equipment. All those things have been changed recently. So, the environment is changing, the ecosystem is changing. This is the time to be a country which dreams big and the country that thinks that we should own technologies for technology sovereignty. Operation Sindoor has taught us this. During Operational Sindoor, we used all Indian technologies. We did not use GPS. We did not use foreign satellites. We used our own satellites. We used Navic. You know, all these things are required. The drones that were used were domestic drones. But I want to point out, a lot of components of those drones were not Indian. Now we need to say, okay, if drone is one of the technology we should choose, we should make everything that a drone needs. So that is the vision that I want to say. I feel that the industry must have, the country must have.
Absolutely. It's when you say aspiration is greater than resources, it's once again time to underline that when the aspirations of 140 crore Indians combine, imagine the momentum that it's going to create and the transformation that it is going to bring about. So something that we have envisioned for 2047 is something that we can achieve well in time, and something that we want to happen will happen perhaps maybe well before time. But I promise you that we'll continue with this conversation further, because there's so much to talk about in the area of innovation, research and development, and how India is progressing. But there's so much that can still happen, provided that aspiration is given the right direction. So once again, I would like to thank both my guests, Professor Sharma and Dr. Chowdhry, for joining us for that engaging conversation today. Perhaps we'll find time to take this further in another edition of Perspective. But thank you once again for joining us on the program. To you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well. Time allows me to take up only that much on this edition of Perspective.